Welcome to One Foot in Both Worlds, Keeping It Real with Tania and Nette. We're talking about the new piece, unpacking the parallel lives, the subconscious, the conscious, and everything to do with that. So today we're going to continue on with that. And as usual, we're going to be talking about Tanya's experiences. I'm sure. We haven't really discussed what we're talking about, but I'm doing a prediction there because we always end up doing that. How are you, Tanya?
I'm really, really good, Nettie. It's beautiful and sunny. I just had a walk down at the beach, and yeah, life's good.
Yeah, great. Well, I was just telling Tanya briefly before we got on that I've been mega dreaming at the moment. I would say I could recall about 8 dreams when I'm waking up each morning at least, but not just like a little dream, like a day or 2 days or 3 days of like a scenario. Um, and it's really interesting, but my eyes really hurt, and I thought I might have had kind of a hay fevery thing, which is a bit weird, but I now think it's just my eyes because when I dream a lot, my eyes actually move, and I've been waking up each day worse and worse. And this morning I woke up and literally my eyes were stinging. They felt so tired, and I could barely open them. So I'm not quite sure if I've just got over dreaming or I've got hay fever. But we'll work that out.
Mm.
Yeah.
I find your dreaming so fascinating. I I get my information so differently than you. Like I know that sort of how it's been explained that subconsciously the information comes to us at night when we're sleeping, but I will rarely have vivid dreams because I'm so focused before I go to bed of getting a good sleep because I'm an angry biatch if I don't get sleep. And two, like just the way you kind of get information, like I get it in little snippets. You'll like seem to sit down and get this like massive understanding of something, and I get these little, like we were just talking the other day, kind of this drip feed. They're kind of giving me something and then I'm sending it to you going, does this make sense to you? Like I can't totally put this together. And yeah, it's really I just think it's fascinating.
I love the
But
world of how everyone gets things differently. I
yeah.
think that's super cool, and it must be for a reason. But I think I must sit at a position where I remember my dreams. So where they're enough in my conscious that I can actually wake up and recall them. And like I can recall dreams from 2 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, better than I can recall what happened 15 years ago or 10 years ago. So
Oh,
it's where
interesting.
it's, yeah, my dreams are definitely and they're detailed. They For people who don't dream much or don't dream in that way, my dreams could look like a movie, like I'm watching a movie. So the detail of everything, there's nothing missing. There is a tea light on a table that is lit and a door with a red handle. Like it's detail. It's to the point when you wake up, you're not quite sure if that actually happened or not. So you're looking for falsities in it that can tell you that that wasn't your real life. Like that didn't really happen. Um, and it's great when people are different, the wrong ages to what they should be, because then I can work that out pretty quickly.
Right, right.
Um, but when everything is actually like it has been, it's kind of like, oh, did that happen or did that not happen? And so the interpretation for that for other people is they're having that in their subconscious. So when they see something, they're like, oh, like I just feel weird today, or I feel kind of thing. Or they start to go in a path in their life and they're like, oh, I feel like I've been here before. Like this feels familiar, you know? And we talk about parallel lives. It's actually connecting into one of those lives at some stage of making a decision or changing a stuck, what I call the hamster wheel of getting out of a pattern in your life. And then all of a sudden you go this new path and everything feels lighter and like familiar. And it's like, because you have dreamed it, you have seen it, you have your subconscious has been working through all the little things to get you to go, hey, you're going to take this path in 3 months, or you're going to take this path in a year, or you're going to keep going down this one. And then dogleg in at another stage. And I think that's where dreams are really cool because they are interconnected so much
Hmm.
in my understanding.
Yeah, I think maybe for you, like having that conscious remembering of them is a bit of a heads up. Whereas I think my experience with parallel lives is I'll just feel different
Yeah.
and I'll like it'll kind of be like this feeling like I jumped timelines because what was here was kind of sluggish and a little harder energetically to get through, and then all of a sudden there'll be like a lighter, cleaner energy. Things will flow really easily, and that's the best way I can explain it because when spirit shows it to me, and they keep bringing this, is it's almost like a grid, like there's all of these different paths, but they're not active, they're not coming out in, like it isn't happening like you said, we talked about it and you're like, no, but the only thing that's happening is right here.
Yeah.
But I think energetically the way they show it to me is we can kind of switch to a different frequency of the same thing. And help me out if this makes sense to you, but this is how they keep showing it to me, is you can jump to a different frequency where you're kind of moving on a different frequency, so you'll feel differently and then people kind of interact with you a little bit differently, but it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that there's a different time
Yeah.
scape.
I suppose my understanding of that and what I can see visually when I look at people, and definitely when we came back from a break, I could see this. I was like, whoa, Tanya, you look different. And you look lighter and you look less sluggish, as the word that you used. You can see that in your energy. And I think what happens when you're in what I call the hamster wheel, you have this energy that is like the front of you. It's like you're stuck in this kind of um, block in some ways in part of your life. And when you actually move through that block and you process all that and you get out of the hamster wheel, like you have with not just relationships with a partner, but just relationships in general, you can that energy actually moves, and so you feel lighter. People will interact with you differently because they're not coming up to that energy when they're seeing you that is invisible and people don't know that they're there. When people often say to me, I don't know if I'm on the right path, I can often see like you are 100% on the right path where you should be. And it is too, which is going to sound strange, but visually to me, it's on an angle from where you were going, and it's a lighter, softer, easier path for you than what you were going to have to go through here and what you'd been going through, because you had this energy that you were carrying with you, and that energy is still going up on that path, but you've dropped that energy and realized what it is, and you're like, no, that's not me. You've got rid of that block and you've come out this side. So you're going on a trajectory to the side, which isn't carrying that baggage anymore. That's gone,
Yes.
right? Now that energy could get stuck somewhere like a ghost if someone comes back to that space, or you go back into a room and you go, oh wow, if someone sort of drops it and wrong. But I think you've actually peeled it off as you've gone over kind of a year. And so you've really not left much energy going forward in that path at all. You slowly got into that. So it's not like it was one day you're like this and the next day not. You've hard worked at this for many
Oh
years.
my God. Yes.
Yeah. And then you've gone and you're like, you've got to the point where you're like, hang on a minute, the last bit that was there, you've just sort of shaved it off and you're going there. Now, we're not going to talk memory because it's it's too
Confusing.
complex. Yeah.
It'll take us quite some time to get to it.
Yeah. But you are carrying, that's the only thing, is you can head back into a line because you still carry a memory energy, which can get you back to that line. The further away you go from that, the more you shed that, and you get new sort of patterns within your body and within energy around you. So it's important when you do have these changes and go into these new paths that you continue to keep working on the things, for listeners, because your body is still in the memory of that. There's parts of your conscious and subconscious that are still have got memory patterns of that. That I shouldn't probably have gone there because it's quite complex. But
No, but I can actually give a perfect example.
awesome.
So
Of course you can.
I can give two, and it relates to right now because having a career and raising my son by myself and with the challenges and all of those things, I've had to conserve my energy, if that makes sense. I have to always sort of have all my balls up in the air, making sure everything's done. And Zach's in a really good place, and I'm in a better place. And one of the things I think that made a really huge difference for me was the pineal. But I catch myself sometimes like, oh, I want to go do this. Oh, can I? Should I? Should I be at home doing this? Should I be at home doing that? The things
Yeah.
that the balls that I used to always have to keep up into the air, I don't have to as much anymore because like I know a lot of it for me was like my on a physical level was my hormones were imbalanced, my iron was low, and I was really low energy. So I always had to kind of make sure I was on top of everything because if I had like a day where I was exhausted, I really didn't have the space to sit down and be that,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I have to keep kind
That's a
of
great
because
example of,
because almost like a mental memory where I have to be, but hold on, we're not in that space anymore.
yeah.
You don't have to conserve your energy. You can, sort of go and do these things. And then the other example is I'd taken a bit of time off work and this was years ago. I was actually going to retire. I was struggling with Zachary. He was having a tough time and I was parenting alone. Like I didn't have a partner. Zach's dad wasn't involved. I didn't have family around. I was 100% alone. And anybody that's done that, it is very difficult because there's so much to be said about having support in your life,
Yeah.
for sort of how you do. So I ended up getting diagnosed with ADHD and I started taking ADHD medication. And it was mind blowing. I was like, I could not believe that I had gotten to where I was in life with the brain that I had. Like
Yeah.
it blew my mind because all of a sudden everything was so much easier. Like I would be doing, I have a point, so stay with me. I would be doing the dishes in the kitchen and then I would go to the living room and I would straighten a pillow and then I'd see a blanket and then I'd go downstairs and go do the laundry. And then I would come back upstairs and I'd scrub a toilet and then I would go back to the kitchen and be like, shit, I was supposed to be doing dishes. Like that was my brain. So, you're working full time, you're parenting and you're doing all the things. And it just got harder and harder to sort of cope. So anyway, so I started the medication and that's what I really noticed was that my thoughts became in order,
Yeah.
like in order, like, okay, we'll do the kitchen and then we'll do the living room and then we'll do the laundry. So everything just kind of became a little bit less chaotic for me because my brain was working better. But then it came time to go back to work. And I remember having this anxiety because I was kind of like, oh, like, what if, Zach needs this? And what if, I'm too busy at work and I'm stressed out and I'm coming home like, and I had to go, wait a minute. You're not coming into this with the same brain.
Yeah.
You're coming into this with a completely different brain. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's exactly what you're talking about when it comes to sort of that memory, because yes, we can change our energy. Yes, I can change the function of my brain. Yes, I can change those things, but we have to remember we're doing this differently now. We are different as we approach
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. And on a big scale, that's one of the fundamental reasons why traumas in particular take so long, because we still react to traumas when we're not in them anymore. So the memory and the pattern of that is so intrinsic into us. So, we quickly go and make our bed so we don't get in trouble, but we're not even living at home anymore with strict mum. But we can't leave the house without it because that memory of that we don't want to go there, we don't want to go the consequences of what it is. So you start these patterns and these things, it's harder to get out of that kind of thing. So yeah, it's breaking away from that. So when you are on that path where you can feel like you've changed, where you feel like you're in a new life, a parallel life, or I hate the word, but I'm getting more comfortable with it, where you feel like you've moved timelines.
Yeah.
And no, I say feel like, um, that,
But
um,
you do though, Nettie. You move timelines. It's an energy. Energetically, you do kind of move. And you even said it when you were explaining it. Like you said, this one would be a harder road. This one you veered off, which was going to be an easy road. This is the energy of the difficulties, and this one's the energy that's easier. I know it's hard for you, but
yeah,
because
but
I think you're taking the word
I'm very
timeline
literal.
literally.
Yeah, I'm very literal.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and but when you're on that, the secret to stay on that is to make sure that you don't get caught in the memory of this. You are not this anymore. You are not in that. You are not that. And it's just
Right.
doing exactly like you said. Your example was brilliant, because it's that reminding myself, hang on, no, that isn't relevant to me anymore. That's not relevant to me anymore. I don't have to worry about that anymore. And so you change the pattern. And the further you go away, the further the pattern actually comes and the easier it is. But it's almost like you've done the hard work to get off the thing, and now you got to do the hard work to leave that behind and get a new pattern, you know, and then find your next line and your next line and that sort of stuff. So,
So
yeah,
that to me is how spirit shows me parallel lives. It's not like these different universes and these different actions acting out. It's the energy of it. And like you said, in the conscious and the subconscious, those choices kind of get implanted into the subconscious. And then we get to make our choices based on energy field, an energy grid or a line, if that
yeah.
makes sense, which is cool because that's actually what you were seeing very clearly. And a lot of times when you talk about stuff, you talk about these different lines and choices, right? And so again, I think it really comes down to, are we putting the work in? Like, are we sort of going through the things that
Yeah.
are
Yeah. So I often see, um, for people, they'll ask, when is this going to happen for me? When's that going to happen for me? Or, can you see this in my future? And I often see like a date or a time. And I don't know what it is, but I know that that is the seed, like that's where it changes and that's where it starts from. And that if that doesn't happen, I was talking to one person and I could see three paths, right? And there was a sort of a time there. And if that learning didn't and the work hadn't been put in, it wasn't going to happen then. And it was a shame because I could see a very hard road ahead. And I knew where they were going to be in about 5 years. I could see up here where they would be, but there was a very hard road that they could go to get there. And unfortunately, I think that's where this person is going. But there's other like opportunities in it. So it's funny that energetically you can see that, and like these dates come up in front of you for these timelines for people, but it's like, I hate knowing the future. It's like I really dislike it. My husband loves it. He wants everything predicted and all that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
Whereas I really believe that the work that needs to be done is not understanding the future, but understanding where you are now and what changes and energetic blocks you've got so that you can work through those, so that when you got to this road up ahead, whether it was in a month or 3 months or 5 months, you could take that easier road rather than have to go through the shit to keep going and maybe even die not getting through that and then having that seeded again back through your life. So, I've only known you a year, just over a year, and I've watched an absolutely amazing amount of blocks and stuff that you've worked through and done the hard work, and that most people listening have been kind of gifted with seeing someone do that they can't do themselves yet. And I think that's why your little experiences are so important for people to go back. You haven't listened to all of them. Go back and start listening to some of the ones. The downloads are great, they're fun and exciting because they're new stuff. But your experience pieces are what people need to listen to, because that's actually the hard work that gets done to make the changes to make you feel like you do now, so much lighter, so much easier. Yes, you don't have all the things that you think you needed on a wish list to be happy, but you are happier without them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you start to realize that they're not the things that make you happy, that that the way you feel and the way you move through the world is what makes you happy. And then those things tend to just come to you so much easier. So I think sometimes those energy dates that we see are more where the change happened to put you on the right path to get to that thing. Otherwise, you would have been going up that path. And
Mm-hmm. I don't, because I mean, I think that we can share that there was a specific date for me with
yeah,
you, if you're
I didn't
okay.
want to go with
Yeah,
that
yeah,
because
I'm
that's
okay
more
with
yours.
talking about it. I can tell you're dancing around it. Um, where you said this specific date, like this is a change point for you, or this is because it was obviously for me. I'd love to have a partner, right? Oh, dating update. I'm no longer dating Anthony. It just wasn't the right fit for me, so I moved on. And
Yeah,
and you, anyways, you had this specific date, and it's interesting because I'm not upset about it. And I used to be like, Jesus, that spirit, you know.
yeah,
And now I'm like, I'm okay with that. Like,
yeah,
and and I'm okay with it because I think that I have gotten to a place in my life where it is more important to me to protect my peace, to protect my castle, to protect my finances, my home. Like, and I'm not saying that in a way that I'm not open to something wonderful. I absolutely
yeah,
am. But I've gotten to this great place of just being at peace with it. And I was actually reflecting on this, and this is very vulnerable. I find it uncomfortable, but I'm sure a lot of people will relate. I wanted support and that feeling of like safety and security so bad that which are completely normal, healthy human needs,
everybody. Yeah, nearly
right?
everybody. Yeah,
Yeah, very
desires that.
normal,
Yeah,
healthy needs. And so I think I just I gave discounts, right? Because I wanted that so bad. And it's not that I couldn't give it to myself, but there's a big difference between, I don't know why we're going down this road, but here we are. There's a big difference between having it yourself and then having someone come in and like scoop you up and just kind of take care of you. And you don't have
yeah,
to mentally think of everything and do everything, like just taking some of that mental load and everything off. And I don't know, I think I've just gotten to a place where things are easier and I have all the skills, if that makes
yeah,
sense. That it's
yeah,
just not as it's a want more so than it was a need. I mean,
yeah.
I don't want to say that. It's still a need. Yeah, I don't know quite totally
But
how to
it's not
unpack
as,
that,
you're not
but
as hungry for it. You're not like having a beautiful meal and saying, but I really wanted a good dessert. Where's the dessert? Where's the dessert? And you're concentrating on that and you're forgetting the what you've got. And I think that's the difference in a way.
yeah,
Sometimes
and now
you
I'm
get so
satiated
obsessed.
with the meal.
Yeah, that's right. And you go, this is really good. And then like if the dessert's as well, oh my gosh, this is an amazing dessert. This is bonus. I wanted that dessert. Like I need to get dessert in my life every
Yeah.
now and then, but it's not. And I think everyone, I think in a relationship, we do compromise things. And it's just how much are you compromising to get that need? And I think you were compromising too much to get that need and
Yes.
putting blind eyes to certain things. I'll fix that. We'll work that out. That
Yeah,
won't
we'll work
matter.
on that. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it doesn't work. It
Yeah.
doesn't work.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think for me, that time frame was actually when interesting was when the big download of the pineal came and the subconscious. And I think for you, that's probably where that energy was that I could see that there's a game changer for you. And whether it is being the partner, which I do still think that it is, or whether it's that you knew you don't need dessert anymore all the time. Like dessert isn't what you're chasing. If it's there, it's there. If it's a bonus. I
Yeah.
think that's the change for you for that time. But I can definitely see like this, you know, almost 35-degree angle that you went off on that is so much. easier. And I can see that that'll change again and again. It's almost like you'll go there, which it does for all of us. Um, and yeah, I think this is relative to every single one of us. We've all got areas that we've got things that energetic blocks in, and I'm just lucky enough to see them. So for me, my worst part is I know what mine are very clearly. But I have to do the hard work in them. And that's not always where you want to focus. So you turn to the rest of your good life and go, oh, I'll do this. But it's like that has to be addressed. That has to be done if you're going to move forward on that. And your life's going to
Hmm.
be more fulfilling, or your path that that calling that you've got will end up going there. So, but yeah, they're
Yeah.
the hard bits. The hard bits are always the ones that change you. So,
Yeah, I actually think, you know how you named it the missing piece?
yeah,
That was huge for me.
yeah,
Huge. Because sitting in that space of the pineal, and what was interesting is sometimes I'll be out and about and I'll catch myself. I'll be like, oh, I slipped forward.
yeah,
And I'll just kind of move my awareness back. Is it takes me into a space where I can naturally, within my mindset, calm my nervous system,
yeah,
which is a really big deal
yeah,
because there's other ways like I needed with perimenopause, I needed to balance my hormones. I take ashwagandha, I take different things to kind of be calming. I go for walks, I try to eat well, like all of those things that are in the series too. But this to me was such an icing on the cake. Like
yeah,
it was truly, truly phenomenal. And I have had a lot of trauma in my life, be it work or other things. I've had a lot. I've had a lot of trauma. And getting myself, I've had to put a lot of focus and work into having a calm nervous system. Because when your nervous system goes out and you get stressed, your hormones, excuse me, go out of whack because it affects your adrenals. And then your actual like female hormones and stuff go out. So being able to energetically and sort of emotionally and in that state of mind be able to process things in a way where my nervous system is calm and I'm not having sort of those like activations. I don't like the word trigger. I really don't,
yeah.
because I think it gets used as
Overused.
like an
Yeah,
insult almost, like,
yeah,
oh, you're triggered. Like,
yeah, yeah,
fuck
yeah,
off. Who in this
yeah,
world does not get activated? Like, get over yourselves,
yeah,
people.
yeah,
Me being triggered just triggered you for your lippy little mouth.
yeah.
Like, shut
I
up.
think that trigger is a trigger for
Right?
Tanya. Shh, don't tell her.
Their triggering to my trigger is a trigger to my trigger.
Okay, we won't activate you with the
Okay.
word
But
trigger.
right? But I like the word activation better because it's true. Like our nervous system has memory, and
Yeah,
and certain things, whether they are actually a threat in that moment or not, it triggers and activates it. And
yeah,
then it goes, "Woo," and that's what they were showing me was, you have the, which we talked about in the past lives, and the nervous system. We talked about the energetic, spiritual nervous system and the physical nervous system. And again, the intuitive nervous system is steady Eddie, like it's good.
yeah,
And then for me, when I bring my awareness into the pineal and into that more open space, it calms my
yeah.
physical nervous system.
It's really funny because the four C's are coming up, and we did a podcast ages ago on the four C's, very, very early before these downloads. And it was talking about change and conscious awareness and things like that.
Yes.
And now I'm like, oh, wow, that was like just a precast to this kind of, a very easy way for people to realize. But change is what is the memory pattern that we get out of, and it's something you have to work on, and you got to work on it consciously. And you're absolutely right, the pineal is the thing. I feel myself going out of the pineal all the time. Like I know when something, as you said, activates something that's been something from the past that maybe someone does all the time, and they bring that up again, and you're just like, here we go again. And
Hmm.
you're not letting them change. You're not letting them do that because your memory of this whole situation is like, this is all going to happen again. And you put yourself into the role that you are, you put them into the role that you are. Like you've predicted from memory sort of what's going to happen. And it's not necessarily it's going to happen, but generally your energy is now going that way. So it's what happens.
Yes.
And it's really cool when you actually, and I've done this many a time because I'm aware that I'm making this error. And so I just sit in my pineal and I go, okay, listen, actually listen, because we're now 5 years past that. What is this person actually trying to say that I haven't been hearing the whole time, that makes them keep bringing this up, that makes me react, and then we get into this whole, get nowhere, both go off pissed off, and then come back and
Yeah.
go, I'm sorry, but nothing got resolved. We're in a hamster wheel.
Hmm.
Um,
Because what will happen is that your body, this is kind of how they show it to me, is that and I felt it too, your body will activate. Your nervous system is like for anybody that's just listening, it's like a squiggly line, it's like a string that's squiggly. And and then it starts shooting like adrenaline and your body starts to go,
yeah.
right? And then you're flooded, which is,
Yeah.
it's kind of a psychology term. You're flooded, and what you're doing is you're in that space of what it was 5 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Everything's back there, like it's got that memory that it can kind of trigger.
Yeah.
But the situation itself may not be that anymore.
Yeah, and often it's not. And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, can we work past this? And my husband and I just did this recently where we were in this thing, and I just went, stop. Like, this is not the same situation. We're talking about something that's about 15 years earlier. And I'm like, we're not going to get past this. This is going to be, it was to do with business, but this is going to be an issue with us in
Hmm.
business where we're not going to get the best value out of what we're doing because we're both stuck with the issues of each other. So we talked it out and we worked it through, and then we made a commitment when that comes up that we wouldn't go straight to that thing, that we would try and sit back and sit in our pioneers and listen to what's going on. And I don't talk about it with him like sit in your pioneer. It's like, but it's, the language of, can we just pause and not make any thought or judgment against that person until they've finished what they're saying, and try and hear it for what it's being said, not what you think is going to be said. Because we do, someone says two words and we've already got the whole sentence finished in our heads. It's
Yeah.
like, oh my God, here they go again. They're going to, like,
Yeah.
you
And so I think the key teaching of that is that when you address life from that space of the pineal, you don't get, like, at least this is my experience so far with it, is I don't get that zing.
yeah,
Like, oh yeah, I know where this is going. I
yeah,
can kind of sit back and just hear and
yeah,
see things from such a wider perspective. So it's made a really big difference for me.
yeah,
It's almost like a consciousness ability to calm your nervous system. It's fascinating.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I just, I watch all these different teachers and whatever else out there, and I kind of go, this is so is the word pragmatic? It's a pragmatic example. Like this is something that you can just get the word if it's
yeah.
if I'm using the wrong word. It's such a clear example of something that we can actually do
Yeah,
to move through life in a way calmer and better way.
yeah,
And two, you can kind of sit there and be like, I can see how this person coming into my life, what that kind of purpose was. I'm not angry at them. I'm not, I'm
yeah,
not judging it. I can see it for the lesson that it was and what the purpose was. And I'm not stuck in the emotions
yeah.
of it. But I'm not avoiding my emotions. That is not what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I,
But you're
I
not
want to make,
ruled by emotions. So
yes,
that's the difference. You're not
by
led by the
the,
emotions.
and
Yeah.
it's not just the emotions. To me,
It's everything. Yeah.
it's the out of whack nervous system that kind of
Yeah.
makes you more reactive.
Yeah.
Because I remember, and they brought this to me I'm gabbing a lot today. They brought this to me a couple times where they're talking about nervous system, but then they're talking about emotions having two components. One being like a signpost for you. And I just kind of lost my train of thought with that. But also it processes through the nervous system, but then it also has to process energetically. And I
Yeah.
believe that we've talked about this.
Yeah, we have. Yeah.
So emotions are of the physical. They're bringing it to me again, so bear with me. Emotions are of the physical, but there's an energy that comes in the intuitive body, like energetically. And it's that energy that we need to process almost together moving through. Because
Yeah.
I was talking to my psychologist and he was like, "What's going on? Like you seem lighter, you seem better." And so I was kind of trying to explain all of this to him. And he was asking some really cool questions. He's a shamanic, like he likes the shamanic journey. So he's, he's definitely got that spiritual side to him. And he's like, "But how does that work, Tanya?" He's like, "Because I consider myself fairly level-headed. I consider, that I'm processing my emotions." He goes, "But then I grind my teeth at night. I've got joint pain. I've got a bad back." He's like, "My body keeps the score. Why is my body keeping the score?" And there's a great book called The Body Keeps the Score
Yeah.
and the effects of stress on your body. And I said, that's because when you sit in the pineal, you're processing both. So you're not having that trapped energy in your body
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
causing problems.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, I've been a teeth grinder in my life too, and I know that when I'm out of whack with my pineal, that's one of my symptoms that I wake up and I'm like, oh my jaw, like,
Yeah,
it's bad. And yeah, getting yourself into that and staying in that actually helps. And yeah,
yeah,
it's amazing, as you said, it doesn't just help you mentally, it helps you physically as well. You just feel better. Everything feels better. Like, and you're not drawn to those stuck energy where you go, boom, it's
yes,
like magnetic through your body. You know that gut feeling when someone does something that activates it's like this feeling in your gut and you're just like, oh, and you can't even wait
yep,
to speak. You're just like, shut
yep,
up. You know?
yep. It just because you get all these chemicals through your body, you're just like,
Yeah. Wow.
right? I cannot wait to tear a strip off you,
Yeah. 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 So
which is one way to release the energy.
yeah, and I think that the really important point that you bring up in most of the videos since we've had this is we're not saying not feeling your emotions is the right thing to do, because
Not at
100% you
all.
need to feel your emotions. That's great. It's being just not led by emotions and being in control of emotions so that you can feel them the way that they should be felt, not in an emotive way. Um,
Yeah,
not in a way that's blocking everything else. It's like you want to feel your emotions, each of them, for what it is. You want to
yep,
deal with them. You want to go through that. That's part of the journey. So feeling lighter and better and on this thing doesn't mean that you're not going to have days where you absolutely cry and days where you laugh
oh
your head
no,
off. And, that is actually where you are in such a better way, where you
yeah,
are emotional in a good way, not
yeah.
in a trapped way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to say that this is a deeper mindset than I'm going to hold my emotions in and then, oh, look at me, I'm handling them better. That's not what we're saying,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
right? We're saying you need to be in that space in the pineal where you're kind of open to the universe. I wish I could explain it to people what it is and what that space feels like. But the thing is,
Yeah.
you're going to know. And I don't know if I use this analogy about sailing, where it's a completely different language. And they were like, oh, you
Yes, you
have to do
did.
this
You
with
did.
this rope. Yeah.
And we
But
noticed the picture behind you with
yeah,
the
yeah.
sailing picture. Yeah.
I just need to get on this boat and feel what it feels like
Yeah.
to sail.
Yeah.
And so you got to kind of get yourself to that space that it actually works for you
Yeah.
to be able to do sort of the processing.
And it's so much more than people wanting to be more spiritual in their, like, what I call tricks, but like being a medium or being a whatever, because you are a highly gifted medium. And yet by coming into this, it's not to do with your mediumship.
No, it's to do with how I'm moving through life.
Yes, and that's where that's kind of the fundamental thing of why, from my point of view, this podcast got started, was what I wanted to do was to get the la-la and the woo-woo out of it to realize that the fundamental key of spirituality or intuitive connection, let's call it that, was this peace, this peace where you're in the pineal and life is so much easier. And that's what I wanted for everyone. I wanted to be able to somehow, I didn't know that we were going to have these massive downloads and all this sort of stuff was going to happen. I didn't predict that in any way. And I had no idea why you and I were destined to meet and going through, but we were just following what we kind of had to
Yeah,
were
we were.
pushed. Yeah. And I think if this changes the life for one or two people who then realize that and educate their kids in this way or their friends, and it stems out to people, that's what will fill my cup
Me
in
too.
what this whole podcasting has been about, without
Hmm.
even knowing at the start that this is what the point was.
I
Yeah,
had no idea,
yeah,
like none. And then I was sort of the experiencer. And it's so funny because sometimes I don't want to sound like a terribly egoic person. I was like, is this all for me? Because I have learned something from all of it.
yeah,
And maybe I'm just open to learning, right? But I think everybody can learn from it. But it has really gotten me to a far deeper understanding of so many different things and of spirituality that if nobody else ever hears this, I am so happy that it happened. But I think what I was kind of trying to say earlier, and I don't know if I said it, this is actually a solution. This isn't like a hopeful message
yeah,
that, you talked about the future. I used to love hearing about the future and sort of what was coming and whatever. But so many people kind of getting that information where it's like, oh, there's this energy happening and there's that energy happening and there's this. And it's like, oh my God, you guys, could you just tune into this is actually like spiritual solutions sent from spirit
yeah.
of what like you can actually logistically do.
Yeah,
And that's what I love about it.
you want to have a better path forward, an easier life, and like that's sort of this is real. Like this is keeping it
Yes.
real with Tanya and Nettie. This is it. And you can go and get so many predictions, but if you don't do this, the like the path that they see is going to be further and further away
Yeah.
until you learn how to do
Yeah.
this. And it's an amazing yeah, it's an amazing piece, and I love that we were able to bring that. And I hope it does spread more and more so that, share it with your friends. Like if you think there's someone who's going through a troubled life that might not even, maybe not into this, just send it to them and say, hey, I don't know if this is going to suit you, but it might. Because how lovely would it be if you were the one who sent something to them that changed their life? Like, I think that's
Yes.
amazing, that chain of changing life. And it's interesting you said before, you know, was it your ego or did you feel like this was all for you? Like, this is all for you. It's really interesting because I've had quite a few people that I know that listen to it go, oh my gosh, it's like each week I turn your podcast on and it's like you have been in my house for the week and you're giving me
Oh,
exactly what I needed. Like yeah. So it's funny, I think, that the people that are listening at the time that they're listening, it does just feel right for them. It can relate into their life, not in the exact scenarios, but the same sort of emotions and feelings that they need. So I'm really keen to listen to it. I've got a few friends that have said, oh, I just haven't been able to listen to it. I try to, and something comes up. And I think that's because that's not the right time for them.
yeah. It's
There's
going to
going to
come
be a
at the
time,
exact right time.
yeah, coming soon. They go, okay, now I binged those 5 series
Hmm.
in 4 days and they just made sense to me, or they were just what
Yeah.
I needed.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think that's pretty cool about the universe too. Um,
Yeah. And I
the
might not be quite, oh, sorry. I was just going to say I might not be quite as much fun bitching and complaining about spirit on here, but I've actually having gotten this missing piece, I don't feel as much resentment
yeah,
with the all the stuff that I've been through. I mean, I had a major temper tantrum because I was like, why the hell didn't you guys tell me this sooner?
yeah,
Because this could have been really valuable information. But I just have to trust that it came at the right time. But I'm getting more into that acceptance and like, okay, I get it. Like this makes sense,
yeah,
which it's just easier that way. And what
yeah.
were you
And
going to say?
my phone doesn't ring as much or message as much with Tanya saying, "Spirit, what the?" Oh, I'm like, where is she? Is she alive? Is she okay?
Oh, it's so funny because I noticed that we're not talking as much, and I was like, I just don't have anything to complain about.
Oh, funny.
Oh,
Well,
it's so interesting.
on another topic, it's been really interesting because when my dad passed away, so that was nearly 2 years ago now, March will be 2 years. So um, we got together and I was talking to family members, and without exposing too much from my family that may not want me to talk about this publicly, um, one of them had mentioned how they had telepathy, and we were sort of talking about what my podcast and that sort of stuff. Um, oh, I don't even know if we were talking about the podcast. I think we're just, I don't even know if it started actually. I think we were more talking about the abilities of that I had. Um, and anyway, he said, "Can you read people's minds?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I said, "Not all the time, but definitely if you've got a strong energetic connection with someone, you can." And I said, "I think that's what sometimes I do. I read actually what the person's like inner self, that what we would call the seventh chakra, is actually trying to tell them. And then I just repeat that. It's not like I'm talking to anyone else. I'm just kind of talking to themselves and saying this information." And that's why it feels so relevant to them. And he was like, "Oh, it was really funny because his wife was overseas and he was texting her, but she was not asking the questions. So he would send an answer and then she would send the question at the same time, but he was answering before the question, and but enough that it had, she was typing it and just spinning send, and as she send, that question came, but could realize he'd sent the answer beforehand. And he said, "I've been able to do it my whole life, but I can't really explain it." And then his son was there, who's in his 20s, and he was like, "Oh yeah, dad always says he can read your mind." And it sort of feels like he can, because sometimes I'll think something and he'll just give me the answer. And so anyway, he sent me this podcast, which was weird because this is now nearly 2 years later, and he's very science based. So, it's not really up his alley to do this, but he's always had this kind of abilities. And he's like, "Listen to this. It's the telepathy tapes, I think it's called, and it's talking about people with autism that are nonverbal, and how they've started to realize that they actually can read minds, and so especially
Yep.
with their mother, and so they have this connection." And then this morning, my girlfriend sent it to me and goes, "Oh, you should see this. It's really cool. It's great. It's right up your alley." And earlier that day, sorry, yesterday, she had come over with friends for a coffee, and a girlfriend had sent her and I a message, and I just said, "Oh, we've got a message coming in," and then we started talking about frogs, and I was like, "I wonder what someone who studies frogs is called." So none of us knew. We looked it up, and it's a herpetologist, which herpy in any word meant all the boys in Australia. We're going to make fun of that. And we had a big discussion of it. And I said, "Well, you might need that in trivia. Someone might actually say, what is someone who studies frogs?" Anyway, they all left, and my girlfriend rings me up. "Did you read the text? Have you read the text yet?" She goes, "Because if you have, you would have rang me." I said, "No, it's this long message from a girlfriend." And it gets to the end and it goes, My son, who is studying physics, has decided to do for his master's the studying of frogs. Question mark. It's like, whatever that's called or something. I can't remember what she wrote, or whatever that's got to do with physics or something like that. And she was just like, "Oh my gosh," like either just before the text came through or around about the same time as the text came through, we were just, I just paused and went, "I wonder what the study of frogs is called." And here it is. So in many ways, right, that is telepathy. It's like that
I think it's
person,
energy
it's,
too,
well,
right?
that's what telepathy is. So
Yeah.
telepathy is reading energy. And I think that's what mediums do. Mediums read through telepathy. And so when a person does it that doesn't put themselves as a medium or something like that, it's like, what am I? How can I read these things?
Yeah.
Another example which people probably relate to is, and I think I've mentioned this before on a podcast, when I drive in the car with my sister, and driving in the car and that energy for me is really good. My sister and I will have these conversations where we don't finish. Oh, did you know? Yes, I did. Oh my
You
gosh.
and I do that.
You and I do that. Like lots of it happens. And I know one time my husband was in the car and him and I do that. Like I answer questions before he'll walk in and go, are we? I go, at 3 o'clock, we're doing, and we don't even realize we don't finish. But he was like, could you finish these sentences? Do you realize you've been talking for 20 minutes and there's not a full sentence and I have no idea what you're saying? And I mean, her and I shared a bedroom for many years, and we do have a connection where we can just not complete sentences. But that's telepathy. And I think that if you look down into it, if you have a strong energetic connection with someone, you will be able to speak through telepathy. Um,
100%.
yeah, and I think we should accept that so much more as um, a sense or a way of
Yep.
communication than what we
Yeah.
do. And I love this work that these people are doing with this. They're working through nonverbal children,
So
and yeah.
here's what I can't wait to tell you. I'm just sitting here going, "Ee!"
I can see it in your
So
face.
for about the first 4 years, Zach didn't really talk. And I always knew what he wanted. It was never confusing to me. Had I not had that telepathic connection with him, he probably would have been diagnosed a lot sooner. Because if I was
Yes.
sitting there like so confused all the time, I think I would have, it would have, but I could communicate with him no problem. And I remember one day, Zach was a lot older, and um I remember doing laundry, and I remember just kind of chatting with spirit because I do that a lot when I clean house. And I was like, why do they have such difficulty with communication? And
Yeah.
they take things, excuse me, literally, or, like, why do they struggle with it? And they said, because they they're bringing telepathy. They don't need to have as much verbal communication as other people that are less gifted.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah. Yeah.
and there's all the time, I'll think about something and then Zach will say it. And I'm like, oh boy, get out of my head.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
happens a lot. And that's what Spirit said, is that because telepathy is going to become a thing, and they said they're like the first wave that's coming in with that natural ability. So they don't need to talk in flowery, like sugared up ways. They can just say it like
Yeah.
point blank, because that's what happens in telepathy.
Yeah. I
You
remember
don't
one of
go, you
the
don't go 2 secs. You don't go, oh, I'd really like it if you came for dinner, but like you don't have to. But if you do come, if it's not too much trouble, could you please bring some scalloped potato? I mean, we can do it tonight, we can do it tomorrow night. Telepathy would be come bring scalloped potatoes because
yeah. That's really interesting because in my family, we get really frustrated when people say something in such a long sentence. It's like
so get to the point.
why do they have all that fluff? And I know that my brain doesn't work well, and I call that part of my ADHD is like I'm not diagnosed with ADHD, but when people talk about ADHD, I'm a very calm ADHD person. Like you talked earlier about doing the jobs in the house. I'm always doing that. I'm picking stuff. And then when I get myself into the right space, I don't. I concentrate on one thing and I realize that, hang on a minute, you're going everywhere. But when people start waffling, and even my husband, when he tries to say the whole sentence, I'm like, I've got it. Like he can say 3 words and I've already got it. And I've got to
Yeah,
sit through the whole dialogue, right? And it's something I've learned myself is that just because I now understand exactly what he's saying, I have to let him say it all because sometimes hearing it yourself out loud is actually processing for your
yeah.
own brain. And there's
It's a
other
great
times,
sounding board.
yeah, and there's other times where we're talking, he wants to also know that I've heard, but he can do that too when he's in the right wavelength. I can start and he goes, "Oh yeah, okay, I get it," but not to the extent of what you and I do, or not to the extent of what I can do with my siblings. And I think in my family, telepathy is just something that we've been able to do, maybe because there's so many of us, there's always that high energy that we could just do that. Our table talk was always like part into this over there. We would just multi talk in little segments. And I remember my husband getting there just going, hang on, I'm in this conversation that hasn't finished. What are you talking about? Like it was just,
He would be lost.
he's lost. Yeah. And it's like, but she didn't say that. And we all go, yeah, but she meant it, and it's because we could hear it. It's part of your knowing. And people talk about that sense of knowing. And I really believe that telepathy and knowing sit in a similar bucket, like they're in the same one. And so someone who has a lot of knowing um, is probably someone who has a lot of telepathy abilities as well. So
Hmm.
it's a cool area. I love it. And just reminded of that, my brother coming back with this info that I'm like, yeah, that's a space that we could do. Oh,
What
I
is
was going to
it's
say
called?
actually, sorry,
Oh,
I was going to say um, that about 2023, end of 2023 and 2024, lots of spiritual leaders were talking about telepathy and how that this is going to be the way of the future. And I was a little insulted by that because they're not accepting that it is the way of the presence. Because,
yeah.
these autistic kids, and as you like your son's now, I don't know, 15 or something like that. So
Hmm.
he was doing that 11 years ago for 4 years. My son was had a hearing issue when he was born. We didn't know he was deaf at the age of 3. It was like one of my big parenting things going, I didn't know he was deaf. He wasn't born deaf, but he had an ear condition that got him less and less hearing. And even the teachers didn't know that he was deaf. But I am sure that I have no doubt that he could hear and understand because they said he's fluent in lip reading, sometimes even when he's not looking at us, right? Which means he's telepathy. And he was the
Hmm.
one who could pull out a parcel and go, oh, this is whatever it is before it is. And whether he was actually reading the mind of the person who wrapped it up, I have no idea, but he knew what it was. And I think that, we didn't pick that up. You didn't pick up your son's issue. And I think part of it is because of that. And I think telepathy has been something that is, if you're close energetically, especially between a mother and a son, it seems to be
Yeah.
that energetic
Hmm.
cord between us. Telepathy has been around for a very, very long time. I think the difference is that we're going to be aware of it and we're going to accept it more.
Yes.
We're going to
Yeah,
trust it and not make people feel
absolutely.
isolated from it. And a lot of these people feel isolated and alone when they're the mother and this autistic child that has this telepathy that's how they communicate and people don't believe them. And I think being not believed is being called a liar. And it's
Hmm.
it's it's a really hard thing to have. You feel very alone in that. So that's where I think that the words of what the predictions that they are, I don't think the prediction is wrong. I think the prediction is that needs to be said that it's always been around. It's just that we're going to accept it more, and
Yeah.
then therefore may use it more. Yeah.
Yeah. My question was, what's it called? Because I would like to look it up and I can put it in the link. It's called the
Yeah.
telepathy.
Telepathy tapes, I think. It's got a picture of a tape on the thing. I'll just um
Okay, that's really cool. I'd really like to look at that.
yeah,
It was
it's
interesting that you were talking about the lip reading because when COVID rolled around and we had to wear masks, I had such a hard time communicating with people.
yeah. Yeah.
Don't know if it's a processing thing. I don't know if it's an attention thing or what, but when I couldn't see people's lips, suddenly I couldn't hear.
Yeah. Oh,
It was
absolutely.
weird.
But also your facial expressions, but also your facial expressions, right? They give
Yeah.
so much. And when you take away half of the facial expressions, you don't know whether like what the person is actually saying, you know?
Yeah, you don't know if they're
The
joking, if they're
context.
smiling. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. A lot of people struggled with it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it was really interesting. So one thing that I just want to throw out here is that I am going to be doing some group mentoring. I'm going to be starting with a beginner's class and move through. I'm happy to have other people join, and I can, based on interest, I can always create more. So you can get a hold of me at Tania and Nette, TaniandNette at gmail.com in order to get into the course that's coming up in February. And if the class gets full, then we'll just create more. But one thing that I want to share is that I will be speaking on the pineal and I will be able to kind of energetically put you there so that you can have that feeling of what it feels like so that you can adjust, like, oh, I know what that feels like now. So now I can kind of know whether I'm in that space or not. So if that interests anybody, please email us or leave a comment. And thank you all so much for joining us. I hope that you get as much from this podcast as I do, because boy, oh boy, has it been beautifully life-changing for me. So thank you all so much for being here. And thank you, Nettie.
Mhm. Thank you. And if you are interested in that course, I know that the first one is filling really quickly, so definitely reach out
Yeah,
for
I think we
that.
only have like one or two spots left.
Yeah, but obviously you can create another one. So if you're keen, message straight away and get part of that. And Tanya will send you some more information on it. But if I wasn't who like the other part of you, I would be doing it. So I think it's going to be great. I think the energy in there is going to you're going to really that group work that you do together just brings everyone up to such a good level. So yeah, it'll be fun.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right.
I look forward to it. Thank you everybody for being here.